I was alone in a foreign country, and a stranger had just slipped a note under my door telling me to run. I didn't listen. That was my first mistake. It was my third night at the Hotel Maraluz, a quiet place on the coast of Portugal, where I had come to put my broken life back together. I was lying in bed around 11 at night, reading a novel I had bought at the airport, when I heard something slide across the tile floor. A soft, scraping sound, like paper being pushed through a tight space. I looked toward the door and saw a folded piece of paper sitting just inside the threshold. My first thought was that it was a receipt or a checkout reminder from the front desk. I climbed out of bed, walked over, and picked it up. The handwriting was rushed, messy, like someone had written it in a hurry, their hand shaking as they formed each letter. The message was short. Room 308, come now, bring nothing. I read it 3 times, trying to make sense of it. My room was 412. Room 308 was 2 floors below me. I didn't know anyone at this hotel. I didn't know anyone in this entire country. The note had to be a mistake. Someone put it under the wrong door. Or maybe it was a prank. Some bored teenager playing games with the guests. I set the note on the nightstand and went back to my book. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was being paranoid. I was wrong. 10 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. Not loud, but urgent, persistent. 3 quick raps, then silence, then 3 more. I got up and looked through the peephole. A young woman stood in the hallway. She was one of the hotel maids. I had seen her before, passing her in the corridors as I came and went. She was maybe 19 or 20 years old, with dark curly hair pulled back in a ponytail and a small scar above her left eyebrow. Her name tag read Inés. She looked terrified. I opened the door a crack, keeping the chain latched. "Can I help you?" I asked. "You didn't come," she whispered. Her English was broken, but clear enough to understand. "You must come now, please. They're coming for you." "Who's coming? What are you talking about?" Before she could answer, I heard it. Footsteps echoing down the hallway. Heavy, deliberate. The kind of footsteps that belong to someone who isn't trying to be quiet. Someone who doesn't care if you hear them coming. Inés grabbed the edge of the door, her eyes wide with panic. "No time to explain. Come with me, now, or you won't leave this hotel alive." To understand how I ended up in that hallway, running for my life in my pajamas, you need to understand what brought me to Portugal in the first place. Subscribe for more stories and tell me where you're watching from. My name is Serena. I'm 27 years old, and 6 months before that night, my life fell apart. I had been married to a man named Derek for 3 years. We met in college, dated through our 20s, and got married because it seemed like the next logical step. He was charming, funny, and made me feel safe. I thought we would be together forever. I thought I knew him. I found out about his affair on a Tuesday afternoon. His coworker, a woman he had been seeing for almost a year, he didn't even apologize. He just shrugged and said he hadn't been happy for a long time. Like that explained everything. Like that made it okay. The divorce was quick but brutal. We sold the apartment we had bought together. I moved back into a tiny studio that reminded me of my life before him. I went to work every day at the dental office where I had been a hygienist for 4 years, smiled at patients, cleaned their teeth, and came home to an empty room where I cried until I fell asleep. My mom, Linda, was the one who suggested I take a trip. She said I needed to get away from everything that reminded me of Derek. She said I needed to remember who I was before I became someone's wife. My younger brother Theo agreed. He had studied abroad in Portugal during college and couldn't stop talking about how beautiful it was. He helped me find the Hotel Maraluz in a small coastal town called Vila Serena. I laughed when I saw the name. Vila Serena. Serena's town. It felt like a sign, like the universe was telling me this was where I needed to be. I had never traveled alone before. The idea terrified me. I was the kind of person who planned everything, who needed to know exactly what was going to happen before it happened. But I was also desperate. I needed something to change. So I booked 2 weeks at the hotel, packed a single suitcase, and flew across the ocean by myself. The Hotel Maraluz was exactly what I needed. It was small, clean, and quiet. The off-season meant there were hardly any other guests. The building was old but charming, with tiled floors and wooden shutters and a courtyard filled with lemon trees. My room had a balcony that looked out over the ocean. I could hear the waves at night when I left the window open. The manager, a heavy-set man named Duarte, greeted me at the front desk when I arrived. He had a wide smile and spoke excellent English. He upgraded me to a better room without my asking, and told me to let him know if I needed anything at all. I remember thinking how lucky I was to find such a friendly place. The maids were young local women who cleaned the rooms and changed the linens. They smiled shyly when I passed them in the hallways, but rarely spoke. One of them stood out to me, the girl with the dark curly hair and the scar above her eyebrow, Inés. She always seemed to linger a moment longer than the others when she saw me. I caught her watching me once from the end of the corridor, her expression unreadable. At the time, I thought she was just curious about the American woman traveling alone. I spent my first 2 days exploring the town. I walked along the cliffs and watched the waves crash against the rocks below. I visited a tiny church with walls covered in blue and white tiles that told stories from the Bible. I ate grilled fish at a restaurant overlooking the harbor and drank wine that tasted like sunshine. I called my mom every evening and sent Theo photos of the sunset. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. I felt like maybe everything was going to be okay. On my second night, I noticed something that seemed strange, but not alarming. A group of men arrived at the hotel late in the evening. There were 4 of them, all wearing dark suits that looked too expensive for a modest place like the Mariluz. They spoke in low voices and didn't smile. Duarte greeted them personally at the door and led them upstairs to the top floor. I watched from the courtyard, curious, but not worried. Rich businessmen stayed at hotels all the time. It wasn't any of my business. On the 3rd night, I had dinner in my room and went to bed early. The hotel was quieter than usual. I hadn't seen any of the maids all day, which I thought was odd but didn't dwell on. I read my book until my eyes grew heavy, then turned off the lamp and listened to the sound of the ocean until I drifted off to sleep. I woke up to the sound of paper sliding under my door. I had no idea that my quiet vacation was about to become a nightmare. I had no idea that the friendly manager who upgraded my room had been watching me from the moment I arrived, waiting for the right moment. I had no idea that the only person who could save me was a 19-year-old maid who had already lost her sister to the same men who were coming for me. All I knew was that a note on the floor told me to go to room 308, and I ignored it. The knock at my door changed everything. Inés stood in the hallway with panic written across her face, her words tumbling out in broken English. She told me I had to come with her. She told me they were coming. And then I heard those footsteps, heavy and deliberate, echoing down the corridor like a countdown. I didn't have time to think. Inés grabbed my wrist and pulled me out of my room before I could ask another question. I was barefoot, wearing cotton pajamas and nothing else. My phone, my passport, my wallet, everything I owned was sitting on the nightstand in room 412. But Inés didn't give me a chance to go back. She pulled me toward a door at the end of the hallway that I had never noticed before, a service entrance. She pushed it open and we slipped into a concrete stairwell lit by a single flickering bulb. "This way," she whispered, quiet. "They have ears everywhere." We descended 2 flights of stairs, our footsteps echoing off the cold walls. My bare feet stung against the rough concrete. I wanted to stop, to demand an explanation, but something in the way Inés moved told me that stopping could get us killed. At the 3rd floor landing, she paused and listened. Satisfied that no one was following, she led me down another corridor and stopped at a door marked with a faded number. Room 308. She knocked 3 times in a specific pattern. 2 quick, 1 slow. The door opened a crack and a woman's face appeared. She was blonde, maybe mid-30s, with mascara smudged beneath her eyes like she had been crying. She looked at me, then at Inés, and stepped back to let us inside. The room wasn't a guest room at all. It was a storage space that had been converted into a hiding spot. Old furniture was pushed against the walls. Boxes of linens and cleaning supplies were stacked in the corners. A single lamp cast weak yellow light across the cramped space. There were 2 other women inside, The blonde woman who had opened the door introduced herself as Phoebe. She was American, from somewhere in California, and had been staying at the hotel for a week on a business trip. The other woman was younger, maybe 22 or 23, with a British accent and short red hair. Her name was Dara. She had arrived at the hotel just yesterday. Both of them looked terrified. "What is happening?" I asked. My voice came out shaky. "Why are we hiding?" Phoebe answered before Inez could speak. "Those men who arrived 2 nights ago, they're not businessmen, they're traffickers, and we're their targets." The word hit me like a punch to the chest. Traffickers. I had heard stories. Everyone had. Women who disappeared in foreign countries, never to be seen again. But those were stories that happened to other people, not to me. Not in a quiet little hotel on the coast of Portugal. "How do you know this?" I demanded. Inez stepped forward. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. "I work here 2 years," she said. "I see things. Women come alone. They check in. Then they vanish. Duarte always has a story. They leave early. They change hotel. But I know the truth. I see the van that comes at night. I hear the sounds from the basement." She paused, and something in her expression shifted. Pain flickered across her features. "My sister worked here before me. 1 year ago, she disappeared. Duarte told my family she ran away with a man she met. But I know my sister. She would never leave without telling me. She would never leave at all." The room went silent. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. "They took her," Inez continued quietly. "The same men who are here now. They took her, and I never saw her again." I looked at Phoebe and Dara. Their faces confirmed what Inez was telling me. This was real. This was happening. "Why us?" Dara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why did they pick us?" "Because you are alone," Inez said simply. "No husband, no family here. No one to notice if you disappear. Duarte watches the guests. He tells the men which rooms. He has been watching all of you since you arrived." I thought about Duarte at the front desk, smiling warmly as he upgraded my room. I thought about how he asked if I was traveling alone, if anyone was expecting me. I thought about the way his eyes lingered on me a moment too long when I walked through the lobby. I had mistaken his attention for friendliness. I had been so naive. "What do we do?" I asked. "We can't stay hidden here forever. We must leave the hotel," Inez said. "There is a door in the basement, service exit. It leads to an alley behind the building. From there, we can reach the police station." "And if they catch us?" Phoebe asked. Inez didn't answer. She didn't have to. We all knew what would happen if they caught us. "They expect to take you tonight," Inez said. "A van is coming at midnight. We have maybe 1 hour, maybe less." I looked around the room at these women I had just met. Strangers who were now bound together by circumstance and fear. Phoebe was gripping her hands so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Dara was crying silently, tears streaming down her cheeks. Inez stood by the door, listening for sounds in the hallway, ready to run at a moment's notice. 1 hour. We had 1 hour to find a way out of this hotel before we disappeared forever. We couldn't stay in that storage room forever. Every minute we waited was a minute closer to midnight, and midnight meant the van. Midnight meant disappearing. Inez explained the layout of the hotel in hushed tones. The main entrance was on the ground floor, but it was always watched. Duarte kept someone at the front desk around the clock, and tonight the men in suits were patrolling the hallways. Our only chance was the service exit in the basement. It was a heavy metal door that led to an alley behind the hotel. From there, we could cut through the back streets and reach the police station. It was only 3 blocks away, 3 blocks between us and safety. But getting to the basement meant crossing through the 2nd floor, where the men were most likely to be. We needed a distraction, something to draw their attention away from the stairwells, long enough for us to slip past. "There's a fire alarm on the 2nd floor," Inez said, "near the elevator. If someone pulls it, the whole hotel evacuates. In the confusion, we can reach the basement without being seen." "Someone has to pull that alarm," Phoebe said. "Someone has to stay behind." The room went quiet. We all understood what she was saying. Whoever pulled that alarm would be exposed. They would be seen. And if the men caught them before they could escape, there would be no second chance. I looked at Inez. at Phoebe, at Dara. These women had their own lives, their own families, their own reasons to survive. Ines had already risked everything by warning us. She had already lost her sister to these monsters. Phoebe had children back in California. I had seen photos of them on her phone when we were hiding. 2 little boys with gap-toothed smiles. Dara was barely out of college, her whole life still ahead of her. And then there was me, divorced, alone. I had come to Portugal because I didn't know what else to do with myself. I had spent the last 6 months feeling like my life was over, like I had nothing left to offer. But sitting in that cramped storage room, surrounded by women who were counting on someone to be brave, I realized something. My life wasn't over. It was just beginning, and I wasn't going to let it end in the basement of some hotel, loaded into a van like cargo. "I'll do it," I said. "I'll pull the alarm." Phoebe shook her head immediately. "You can't. Those men are looking for you. If they see you alone in the hallway, they'll grab you before you get anywhere near that alarm." "Which is exactly why it has to be me," I said. "They're expecting me to hide. They're expecting me to be scared. They won't expect me to fight back." Ines studied my face for a long moment. I could see her weighing the options, calculating the risks. Finally, she nodded. "The alarm is near the east stairwell," she said. "You pull it, then run down 1 flight to the 1st floor. Take the service corridor behind the kitchen. It connects to the basement. I will take Phoebe and Dara through the west stairwell. We meet at the service door. If you are not there in 5 minutes, we leave without you." 5 minutes, I repeated. "I'll be there." Dara grabbed my arm, her eyes red from crying. "You don't have to do this," she said. "We can find another way." "There is no other way," I told her. "And we're running out of time." I meant it. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt certain about something. I felt like I had a purpose. These women needed someone to step up, and I was going to be that person. Not because I wasn't afraid. I was terrified. My hands were shaking, and my heart was beating so fast I could feel it in my throat. But fear wasn't going to stop me. Not tonight. Ines handed me a small flashlight from one of the supply boxes. "The service corridor is dark," she said. "You will need this, and Serena." She paused, her dark eyes meeting mine. "Thank you for being brave." I didn't feel brave. I felt like I was about to throw up, but I took the flashlight and nodded. Phoebe hugged me quickly, her arms tight around my shoulders. "Don't be a hero," she whispered. "Just get to that door." I promised her I would. Ines cracked the door open and checked the hallway. It was empty. She gestured for me to go, and I stepped out of the storage room into the dim corridor. The air felt colder out here, heavy with silence. I could hear my own breathing, loud and ragged. I moved toward the stairwell on quiet feet, pressing myself against the wall as I went. The 2nd floor was 1 flight up. The alarm was near the elevator. Pull it and run. That was all I had to do. Pull it and run, and don't look back. I reached the stairwell door and paused with my hand on the handle. Behind me, somewhere in the darkness of this hotel, men were searching for me. They wanted to take me, sell me, erase me from the world like I never existed, but I wasn't going to let them. I pushed open the door and started climbing. The stairwell was silent, except for the sound of my own breathing. I climbed 1 flight, my bare feet cold against the concrete steps, and stopped at the door marked with a faded number 2, the 2nd floor. The fire alarm was just beyond this door, near the elevator bank. All I had to do was pull it and run. I pressed my ear against the door and listened. Voices, low and muffled, coming from somewhere down the corridor. I couldn't tell how close they were or how many. My hand trembled as I gripped the door handle. I took a deep breath, counted to 3 in my head, and pushed it open. The hallway stretched out before me, dimly lit by wall sconces that cast long shadows across the carpet. The elevator bank was maybe 30 feet away. I could see the red fire alarm box mounted on the wall beside it. So close. I just had to get there without being seen. I moved quickly, staying close to the wall, my footsteps silent on the thick carpet. I was halfway there when I heard the voices again, clearer now, coming from around the corner, just past the elevator. I froze. The American in 412 isn't in her room. It was Duarte's voice. I recognized the smooth, friendly tone that had welcomed me to the hotel 3 days ago. Now it sounded cold, calculating. Find her, check every floor. She can't have gone far. What about the others? Another voice, one of the men in suits. We have until midnight. The van is already on its way. I want all 3 of them ready to go. My stomach turned. They were talking about us like we were packages to be delivered, like we weren't even human. I heard footsteps moving away, heading in the opposite direction. This was my chance. Maybe my only chance. I forced my legs to move, closing the distance between me and the fire alarm. 10 feet, 5 feet. I reached out and grabbed the handle. I pulled it hard. The sound was deafening, a piercing alarm that echoed through the entire building, bouncing off the walls and filling every corner with noise. Red lights began to flash along the ceiling, strobing in rapid pulses. I heard shouting from somewhere behind me, confusion, doors opening, people calling out in Portuguese. I ran. I sprinted toward the stairwell at the far end of the hall, the one Inés had told me led to the first floor. My bare feet pounded against the carpet. The alarm screamed in my ears. I could hear footsteps behind me now, heavy and fast, someone giving chase. I hit the stairwell door at full speed, slamming it open with my shoulder. I took the stairs 2 at a time, nearly tripping on the last step, the first floor, the service corridor behind the kitchen. I remembered what Inés had said. It connects to the basement. I burst through another door and found myself in a narrow hallway lined with crates and cleaning supplies. The kitchen was to my left. I could smell grease and old food. I turned right and ran toward the darkness at the end of the corridor. I was almost there when someone grabbed me from behind. A hand clamped over my mouth, an arm wrapped around my waist, lifting me off my feet. I was spun around and slammed against the wall so hard the breath left my lungs. Duarte. His face was inches from mine, twisted with rage. The friendly mask was gone. All that remained was something ugly and cruel. "Stupid girl," he hissed. "You think you can ruin everything I've built? Do you know how much money you're costing me?" I couldn't breathe. His hand was pressed so hard against my mouth that I tasted blood where my lips split against my teeth. I kicked at him, tried to scratch his face, but he was too strong. He pinned me against the wall with his body weight, crushing me. "The others will be found," he said, "and you will all be on that van tonight. But first, I'm going to teach you what happens to women who don't know their place." Something inside me snapped. I stopped struggling. I let my body go limp just for a moment, and Duarte loosened his grip slightly, thinking he had won. In that half second, I drove my knee upward as hard as I could, straight into his stomach. He doubled over, gasping. His hand fell away from my mouth. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the first thing I could find, a metal pipe leaning against the wall with the cleaning supplies, and I swung it at his head with everything I had. The pipe connected with a sickening crack. Duarte crumpled to the ground and didn't move. I stood over him, breathing hard, the pipe still clutched in my shaking hands. For a long moment, I just stared at him lying there on the dirty floor. The man who had smiled at me when I arrived. The man who had upgraded my room. The man who had planned to sell me to monsters. He wasn't smiling now. I dropped the pipe and ran toward the basement door. I pushed it open and stumbled into the darkness. Inés was there, just like she promised, with Phoebe and Dara huddled behind her. "Go," I gasped. "We have to go now." Inés pushed open the service exit and cool night air rushed in. We ran into the alley together, the 4 of us, our feet slapping against wet cobblestones. The alarm was still screaming inside the hotel behind us. Red and blue lights were already flashing at the end of the street. Someone had called the police. We didn't stop running until we reached the station 3 blocks away. The police station was small and brightly lit, and when we stumbled through the doors barefoot and shaking, the officers on duty jumped to their feet. Inés spoke rapidly in Portuguese, her words tumbling out so fast I couldn't follow any of it. But I didn't need to understand the language to see the shift in their expressions. Concern turned to shock, then to cold determination. Within the hour, a team of officers raided the Hotel Maraluz. They found Duarte unconscious in the service corridor where I had left him. They arrested 4 men in suits who were caught trying to flee through the back alley. They discovered a locked room in the basement filled with supplies that told a terrible story. Zip ties, duct tape, sedatives, documents with photographs of women, including photos of me, Phoebe, and Dara that had been taken without our knowledge during our stays at the hotel. The investigation that followed uncovered a trafficking network that had been operating out of the Maralus for almost 5 years. Duarte was not just a hotel manager, he was a recruiter. He identified vulnerable women traveling alone, gathered information about them, and passed that information to the men who paid him. Dozens of women had passed through that hotel and vanished. Some of their names were in the documents the police recovered. Most of them were never found. But some were. 3 months after that night, Inez called me on video chat. Her face filled my phone screen, and I could see immediately that something was different. She was smiling, really smiling, in a way I had never seen before. They found her, she said. They found my sister. Her sister Rosa had been located at a safe house in Spain, where authorities had conducted a raid based on information from the Maralus investigation. She was alive. She was traumatized and had a long road ahead, but she was alive. Inez was flying to Madrid the next day to bring her home. I sat on my couch in Portland and cried. Happy tears, for once. The kind that don't hurt. Phoebe went back to California and started volunteering with an organization that helps trafficking survivors rebuild their lives. She sends me updates sometimes, photos of fundraising events and awareness campaigns. She told me once that what happened in Portugal gave her a purpose she didn't know she was missing. She hugs her boys a little tighter now. She doesn't take anything for granted. Dara wrote about her experience. Her article was published in a major British newspaper and brought international attention to trafficking routes operating along the southern European coast. She became an advocate, speaking at conferences and universities about the warning signs that tourists should watch for. She turned her trauma into something powerful, something that could protect others. I flew home a week after the raid. My mom and Theo met me at the airport in Portland. I saw them waiting at the arrivals gate, my mom clutching a small bouquet of flowers, Theo holding a handwritten sign that said, "Welcome home, survivor," with a little drawing of a plane. I laughed and cried at the same time and held them both for a long moment without saying anything. The months that followed were hard. I had nightmares about that hotel, about Duarte's face inches from mine, about what would have happened if I hadn't fought back. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in trauma. I joined a support group for women who had survived violence. Slowly, I began to heal, but I also discovered something about myself that I hadn't known before. I was stronger than I ever imagined. For years, I had let life happen to me. I let Derek cheat. I let the divorce break me. I went to Portugal because I was running away from my problems, hoping a change of scenery would fix everything. Instead, I found out what I was capable of when everything fell apart. I stayed in touch with Inez. She left Vila Serena and moved to Lisbon to start over. She's studying to become a social worker now, hoping to help other women who have been through what Rosa experienced. I send money when I can to help with her tuition. It feels like the least I can do for the woman who saved my life. I think about that night a lot. The note slipped under my door, the desperate knock, the choice I made to stop hiding and start fighting. I went to Portugal looking for peace. I found something else entirely. I found out that danger doesn't always look dangerous. Sometimes it wears a friendly smile and offers you a room with a view. But I also learned that courage doesn't always come from brave people. Sometimes it comes from ordinary women who refuse to disappear quietly. A young maid who risked everything to honor her missing sister. A mother from California who refused to give up. A college graduate who wouldn't stay silent. And a divorced dental hygienist from Portland who learned how to swing a pipe when it mattered most. I'm not the same person who checked into the Hotel Maralus 3 years ago. That woman was lost, broken, unsure of who she was without a husband to define her. The woman I am now knows exactly who she is. Someone who survived, someone who fought, someone who will never stop being grateful for a stranger's warning and the courage to listen. If you want more stories, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from.